let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in importance of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Hi, and welcome to another episode of In the Cloud. I am your host, Stu Miniman, and this is actually episode 50 since I took over this program about 4 years ago from Chris Short. Thank you, Rohan. Love the graphic that you've got for that. Here we are, February 2026. The eastern half of the U.S. Has been gripped in cold for a while. I'm looking forward to some temperatures getting above freezing here in the Northeast where I am. My condolences to some of the folks in regions that have been getting more snow than they are used to. And definitely looking forward to a little bit of thaw, which will lead us into the spring season, which is a reminder for all of the conferences coming up. First of all, from Red Hat and my standpoint, gosh, hard to believe we're about 6 weeks out from hitting the road for KubeCon Amsterdam. Great venue, great city, and always a great thing. We had 3 years ago, I was at the KubeCon in Amsterdam, and it was a phenomenal event. And of course, Red Hat will be there in force with lots of our ecosystem partners. And boy, we're already deep in planning for Red Hat Summit also. We're 3 months away from that, which is in Atlanta, which is where KubeCon North America was last year. Similar to the episode I had a couple of weeks ago with Cy Venom, who I bumped into at KubeCon, I'm really excited. This week's guest on the program, Bobby Allen, is another friend of mine that I bumped into at KubeCon. We caught up a little bit and said, hey, Bobby, got to have you on the program. Let's chat. So Bobby Allen, he's a group product manager and self-proclaimed cloud therapist at Google Cloud. Bobby and I met many years ago. He was a guest on theCUBE when he was working for a small startup looking at kind of the financials of cloud and helping customers with understanding their cloud environments and how to fix that financial long before we had things like FinOps as a term. And he's made his way to Google Cloud. So Bobby, great to see you. Thank you for joining me. And maybe we could start there. Tell us how you get from, guy I met at a company that most people hadn't heard of. You worked at a couple of startups. You've worked at a couple of big companies. And I've seen you on some of the big stage at Google's events and the like.
Yeah. Thank you, Stu, first of all, for having me on. And second of all, glad to see you doing well from us meeting over 10 years ago. Super proud of you, man. And just, always good to bump into your conferences and see that you're doing well and continue to be just the wonderful guy you are who makes people comfortable and brings the best out of them. So thank you for being one of the true ones in the industry. So the way I would break it up, Stu, I'd say that my career has had kind of like three movements. So I would say corporate, startup, and then now big tech. So I started off after grad school at Intel and Bank of America, did the corporate thing, started off as a developer, then moved into project management, product management, delivery stuff. One of the things at the banks do that I did a lot of the Bank of America Merrill Lynch data conversion. And if you remember the plane that went down on the Hudson, 3 people on that plane actually worked on my floor, including one of the guys in the cube right next to me. So amazing story, miracle that they all survived, and super cool. And then I did 10 years of startups, if you can believe that, including the early days of multi-cloud in 2012. I still have the warts and the scars to prove that I was trying to do multi-cloud in 2012. I remember hooking up a company in San Ramon, I won't mention, Stu, to 5 different clouds in 2012. Like, it was one of those things where like you took off from the East Coast and you were supposed to be an expert and you had to figure it out by the time you landed on the West Coast. It was crazy days. 3 startups, 3 exits, super blessed to be a part of that. And then landed at Google about 4.5 years ago because of people like Kelsey Hightower, who was one of the guys who vouched for me. Ronica Lewis is another person who vouched for me to get that. And then was hired by a guy that we both know, Richard Sirota, over at Google. And I've been here 4.5 years or so and love what I do.
Well, Bobby, it's awesome. Yeah, you even one of the startups you were at Turbonomic, which got by IBM. Unfortunately, we didn't have the Slack interconnect between IBM and Red Hat at the time,
Yep.
because like I've been enjoying my friends over at Hashi. We're all excited when we finally got the like, wait, we can actually communicate through Slack rather
Yes.
than that. Because Bobby, gosh, I think about like how I communicated with my friends in tech. For a decade, it was like Twitter was like my
Oh gosh.
direct message backplane. And today
Yes.
it's like, wait, am I getting them through WhatsApp? Are they somehow in the IBM ecosystem through Slack? Or, am I trying to track down a phone number, or God forbid have to do like LinkedIn messaging or something, because
Hmm.
people I know never look at that. So it's tough. But yeah, no, it's crazy, Bobby.
Crazy.
Love there was a podcast that friends of mine ran called The Geek Whispers, and we talked about that on that, like, careers aren't linear, and how you get from one to another. But you talked about your three phases. Like,
Hmm.
do you feel it's very different working for the big tech of Google than it is working for a startup or for the corporate America?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'd say, in a startup, for one, whatever job you have on paper, like, almost doesn't matter. One, especially in a startup, everyone's in sales, whether you know it or not. Because the reality is, in a lot of startups, you got to figure out how to sell something, or you might have to fire a friend. And so you have to figure out how to get really tight and really crisp on your elevator pitch and your value proposition. Also, in some of the startups I was in, Stu, I was doing pitches for, super senior executives at companies in Palo Alto and in California, but then also set up the healthcare plan or set up the retirement plan. Like, you do what it takes to get it done at a startup, right? Chief bottle washer, janitor, cook, cloud evangelist, chief marketer, CTO. Like, you wear all those different hats, and I think it makes you better because you really figure out how to do whatever it takes to get it done. I think in a corporation, I think you learn how to communicate with people who are very risk averse often. And so you need to put yourself in the shoes of other individuals. So I remember at the bank, for example, Stu, I remember at Bank of America, it might take $10,000 to add a new field in a particular system, but it might be $1 million of testing to make sure you didn't break anything downstream. So you want to make sure that you understand what motivates the other folks, so learning how to influence them. And then Google's kind of a mix of all those things, right? It's the bigness and the humongousness of Alphabet, but then a lot of the scrappiness inside of Google Cloud, which is very startup-like in some ways. As we were trying to be creative and do different things to make sure people understood that we're relevant and that we're really in this thing long term. So I feel like Google Cloud is a culmination of a lot of those different phases that I get to do now.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I mean, Bobby, I remember when Google first launched, Google Cloud. I wrote an article. My background being a little bit on the networking side, it was like, well, when you talk about the network, like, Google's second to none. When I first learned about like the cables that run between continents, it's like, that's Google. Like, how do we get response time for things like search down to microseconds when you're doing any search across the globe?
Yeah.
And Google, has had an interesting journey along the way. I used to talk about it a lot back when I was an analyst and covered them, but really feels like the AI moment has really changed the conversations. I know the conversations I'm having with customers, when they think about data, Google always had a strong position there, and AI has had a lot of customers talking to Google. When I talk to my AI team, NVIDIA, of course, is the number one thing you talk about, but like TPUs are like number two usually behind that. So
Yeah.
I'm curious from your standpoint, you've been there 4.5 years,
Mhm.
we were talking a little bit about AI, but it was pre-Gen AI. How
Yeah.
has AI changed that cloud conversation, changed the world of what you're seeing in your
Yeah.
role at Google?
I mean, it's not overstating it to say that it's changed everything. So one, coming here 4.5 years ago, a lot of people probably remember Google Cloud was losing money then. And so to see the meteoric rise, and a lot of you know that we announced earnings recently, and it's just amazing seeing what the team has accomplished, signing bigger customers, people that are having deeper relationships with us, people that are realizing that they can bring all sorts of different types of workloads to Google Cloud has been amazing. But I think AI has, one, it's made people think about data a lot more. And I think it's made people just think about the future and the possibilities. Like, we're all thinking about disrupting ourselves. We're all thinking about how to make things transformational for customers. We're thinking about how, honestly, none of us are teams of one anymore. I forget who it was in the industry who said that there is no such thing as an IC anymore. There are no individual contributors. There may be a human who's orchestrating teams of AI agents or tooling or things like that. I think that's very much how things are playing out. But what we're also seeing is that every customer who comes to talk to us wants to have a conversation with an AI angle to it, whether that's brand new AI workloads, whether it's infusing AI into their legacy or enterprise workloads. There's no conversation we don't have that doesn't involve AI. Hardware, obviously GPUs, TPUs very much comes into that. But then also, transformative experience. I think everybody wants to get beyond the chatbots too. For so long, that was a cool thing. And then folks realized that we've got to get from novelty and science fair project to real value. And I think that's what we're racing towards, is how do people get real value from AI. And so I'll give you kind of my buckets for AI, Stu, because I think AI is becoming a bit of a junk drawer. And the 3 buckets that I see, and we see customers having conversations in each of these, I think you can build AI, I think you can build with AI, or you can use AI. In other words, there's what you build, how you build, and how you operate. Obviously, the people that are building AI, Stu, think the foundational model producers, they do a lot with Google, right? The people like the Anthropics of the world and the other ones I won't name drop, but they do a lot with Google. But that's a narrow section of the population who's very deeply invested in producing the next round of models. Then there are the people that want to build with AI, right? They want AI assistance and how they're doing things powered by Gemini, things like anti-gravity, Gemini CLI. They also want to do a lot with Google. But then there's a whole group of folks, Stu, who want to use AI. And that to me is what's amazing, because I love, Stu, when we get to have conversations with people that aren't in tech. And I had a conversation with my mother about Notebook LM, and it blew her mind. It is so cool when you can have relatives and friends who can really understand how a product can change their life. And she was preparing for a leadership seminar, and I showed her Notebook LM's ability to generate infographics and slides and video overviews. And she was like, my mom at 70 plus years old was amazed. And I saw the light bulbs turning on for her, Stu, that she could see the possibilities of this making learning and teaching so much better. So that's what I'm excited about. Obviously, we talk about infrastructure, but people thinking about the possibilities now in a whole different way, like just being unleashed, is what I'm excited about now.
Yeah, Bobby, it's one of those trends. I've said it many times. Not sure how much you would talk to your family members about cloud when you were doing multi-cloud and everything. That's not going to resonate with your mother, your daughter, and things like that. Holidays last year. You're talking to every generation about AI because it touches them. But to your point, they know about the chatbots. They don't necessarily know about the other things. The other thing you made me think about is, I think about certain technologies, and we talk about the technology. So, like, before I joined Red Hat, I'd say, like, look, Red Hat might be the biggest public winner of Linux because they've made billions of dollars. But we wouldn't have Google if it wasn't for Linux. I worked with Google, back in my EMC days, and they had a custom Linux, and that's how they scaled to their global things like that. And I'm like, no offense to my employer, but y'all are a lot bigger than Red Hat. And, we wouldn't have the cloud. We wouldn't have all these things, and not just Linux, but, that's every technology. It would be like, okay, are the companies that are making these technologies the ones that are going to make the most money, or will it be an order of magnitude more that will do what they can with that? So, like, right now, we're still talking about, OpenAI, AI, and NVIDIA. It's the picks and the shovels. But the question is, will we create trillions of dollars of the AI economy out of what they're doing? And I think that plays into the buckets that you were talking about.
Yeah. I think the other thing that plays in, Stu, to your point, I mean, again, I'm a fan of Google. I work here. Even if I didn't work here, I'm a fan of a lot of the value that Google's added to my life and my family's life. But, Stu, we're at the point now where I think Google has 15 products that have 1 billion users or more. You can't help but learn from that, just operating at that scale. And then what does it look like to infuse AI into all those different products, from Maps to YouTube? Like, Google's drinking our own champagne, right? Is probably the more elegant way to say it than other ways. But it's teaching us so much around what people's expectations are. But I think it's getting to the point now, as you talked about cloud, those things are just kind of fading into the background to a certain extent, right? I think technology in general is getting like electricity. You don't talk about it, you talk about what you do with it. I've never brought a friend over to my house and say, hey, look at this 110 wiring behind the walls. You talk about the television or the new appliance or the air fryer or something like that. And I think what's happening now is we're getting back to that. Like AI is like, it's going to be buried behind the wall to a certain extent, because we're talking about the agents, the applications, the new experiences we're building on top of that tech that's behind the wall.
Yeah. Pat Gelsinger would have called it the dial tone that we're going to have for all these kind of things.
Yeah.
Want to get your viewpoint on multi-cloud. You talked about, the early days of multi-cloud where we used to say people did it by accident, or often they didn't understand, all of the things that go into multi-cloud. Google, you all created Kubernetes. That is one of the things helping to drive all of this. When I look at, our involvement, containerization Kubernetes is a main thing to help customers hybrid multi-cloud, get their environment and AI there. What's your viewpoint on multi-cloud kind of today versus, what you've seen in the last decade?
Yeah, it's, I would say it's going to be a multi-cloud world no matter what we do going forward. People want choice, they want options. I think they've shown that. I'm going to go back to my first startup, Stu, called Service Mesh. Amazing name, right? Probably ahead of its time. I think the difference was at that time, we didn't have a concept like containers or Kubernetes really, that really gave people the ability technically to move around to different runtime environments the way that we do now. And so it was all kind of VM-based, bare metal servers. Like that level of orchestration is just too low level to insulate people from the changes in different providers, on-prem, off-prem, public, colo, et cetera. And so a lot of it was just too hard. You were replicating too many different constructs when you went from one cloud to the other. And that's where companies like Service Mesh kind of had a niche, because they were doing the translation. Kubernetes really took a lot of that away, because there are some differences, obviously, in Kubernetes from one distribution to the next. But for the most part, the core constructs can travel with you across different venues. And so that was really powerful. But I think what's here to stay, Stu, is that people want options. They don't want to feel boxed in. And as a product manager, I have to tell you, this is funny. It's a contradiction when you're building features into something that's essentially connected to the open source world that you give away. And we have these debates inside Google all the time. So there's a new feature coming down the pipeline. Is this exclusive to GKE, or do we roll this out to the rest of the Kubernetes world? And so as you've seen, Google has continued to roll a lot of the goodness that could have been exclusive to Alphabet to the rest of the world. I love that, but it's a challenge as a product manager, because you're trying to differentiate when you're giving a lot of that goodness away. And so I think the multi-cloud world is not going anywhere soon. People want the ability to run in different places. I think what we saw one shift, I think before people would run different types of apps in different places. My modern apps go here, my legacy apps go here, my customer-facing apps go there. I don't think it's that way as much now. I think people are looking at things like regional availability, obviously hardware availability, latency. In this part of the world, I'm going to be in this provider because they've got the best reach to the customers, not segmenting by different types of applications anymore. My AI apps here, my non-AI apps there. I think those lines are getting a lot more blurred, because people have so many different things they want to support in different ways. So multi-cloud is here to stay. Google wants to support that, but we also want people to know that we want to come alongside what they're doing, run a lot of stuff here, but we also want to complement what you're already doing in the other places.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, first of all of us at Red Hat, we totally empathize with the challenge of, being able to differentiate and talk about when it comes to open source. But we're glad. We wouldn't be, I wouldn't be where I am if Google, with some of the support from Red Hat, didn't do, Kubernetes and many of the projects in open source, and love to see the contributed participation there. Want to go into the cloud native ecosystem a little bit. One of the things that's really interesting is, when we think about, how we manage all these environments, Google, not only brought us Kubernetes, but, SREs came out of Google. And something that we see across the industry that take off. And, the last few years, platform engineering has been a really interesting topic. From my standpoint, I said, if ChatGPT didn't come out, I think platform engineering would have been the biggest thing that we're talking about at KubeCon. And it's still, when I've gone to KubeCon, platform engineering is still very important. It's just not quite the hype of AI. Want to get your viewpoint. What are you seeing? As I said, SREs came out of Google, platform engineering ties into it. How's that playing out in your world?
I mean, platform engineering is still a huge topic. It has been nudged aside a little bit just because people want to talk about AI so much. And I think they don't understand how good AI is built on the foundation of good platform engineering, just the housekeeping, the hygiene. And one aspect of platform engineering that's really a big deal is how to support what we call mixed workloads. How do you run AI workloads and non-AI workloads on the same Kubernetes platform? So one of the messages we came out with at KubeCon a couple of years ago was, you don't need a new platform this time. In many of the technology shifts we've seen in the past, Stu, when you went from, say, bare metal servers to virtualization with VMs, or for VMs to containers, you had to change your platform. You had to come up with a whole new platform. Kubernetes is the platform. And what's happened is, with Kubernetes celebrating, 11 years now, GK celebrating 10 years, I don't think people, when we think about the Tim Hawkins and the Kelsey Hightowers, I don't know if I think they would say that they saw a 20-year run, but like, what did that really look like? Kubernetes has expanded to support all these different types of workloads. So to me, a lot of platform engineering's relevance now is, how do you run those different types of workloads on the same platform with the different adaptations and permutations to support, right? A training workload needs something very different than an inference workload or reinforcement learning, or a non-AI workload that maybe isn't generative AI related. And so here's how I would sum it up. If we think about, because DevOps has to be in there too, right? Because DevOps was also one of those terms that we talked about a lot. Is DevOps dead? Is platform engineering dead? And I would say it this way. I would say that DevOps is the culture, platform engineering is the product, and then that platform engineering is implemented in different products in different ways. So think of GKE as essentially platform engineering as a service, where we're baking a lot of the things that we learned supporting a lot of the alphabet scale products into our distribution or flavor of Kubernetes. That's how I'd kind of wrap it up. So, Vertex AI, for example, runs on top of GKE. We absolutely learn from supporting that product with all the different users on top of our platform. How do we bake those best practices in so everyone doesn't have to be an expert? That's a lot of where I think platform engineering and SRE come together. We're integrating a lot of those signals, those golden paths. We're trying to help people move away from toil and providing automation and self-healing to let them focus on what they're building on top of the platform, not the health of the platform itself.
Yeah, Bobby, a lot of good points there. We found in our customer base, right, how do they get that maturity of the environment that they have? And when we've dived in deep with a lot of our customers that have been on the Kubernetes journey for 5 or more years, when you see what they have, it looks and sounds a lot like platform engineering. Now we can actually accelerate that because we have things like Backstage in there. And to your point about those transformations, oftentimes, God, when I was an analyst, and I'm sure you've gotten, it's always like, hey, what's next? What's next? Okay, yeah, we're 10 years into Kubernetes. What's going to replace that? What's been really nice is when we're talking about all the AI things, is Kubernetes perfect for AI? Actually, there's a lot of work that's been being done, because from the stateless workloads that we had in the beginning to the very transitory workloads that we need with AI, things change. But if you look at what's happening with LLMD, with MCP, with A to A, it's how do we take the things that we're talking about with AI and integrate them in, because we have a nice foundational layer with Kubernetes. Bobby, you it's funny. I actually went back and watched some of the first interview that I did with you over a decade ago.
Oh no.
And no, Bobby, trust me, like, you go watch my early Cube stuff, it makes me cringe. But there's something about you that you love to do. You love to do these analogies, Bobby. You always, even in that first interview, you had them in there. So you got one on these transformations. What do we rip and replace? What do we, build on top of it? What do you have for the folks on how to understand these transformations?
Yeah. So Stu, thank you for realizing that I'm quirky like that, because for me to understand a concept, I have to put it in terms of something that I understand, which for me is typically either food, superheroes, or real estate. I feel like you can explain the entire world in terms of one of those things. And so I'll give you one. You were talking about A to A and things like that. So I want to start with the superhero one, and then I want to go to a real estate one. So if I'm talking to folks at home around agents, which are a lot of the big things right now, MCP, A to A, A to K, things like that, I would explain it in terms of Captain America, right? So MCP, Stu, is like capabilities. Think about Steve Rogers getting the Captain America shield. A to A, agent-to-agent protocol, is like Captain America becoming an Avenger. That's about collaboration. And the ADK, Agent Development Kit, is like creation. It's like SHIELD creating a program for regular people like you and I to become agents. So MCP is about power-ups, A to A is about partnership, and A to A is about programs. And so again, there it is, Captain America. So when we think about how we pull all these things together, the reality is that we're building something, but Captain America was a good guy before he was a superhero. I want everybody to get that, and we'll come back to that later.
And if I heard you right, then you're saying A to A and MCP put together the whole story. We're not a civil war, concern here.
We're not a civil war. We're not a civil war. We may have differences of opinion, but we're not going to be clashing like he and our man did in Civil War. But I think the principle is, and I'll take it to real estate now, because one of the things that's interesting, Stu, is cloud and AI are so in our minds that sometimes it's hard to picture what transformation looks like. And that's why I love real estate, because you can put your hands on stuff. So I will confess that I do not like change, Stu. I really don't. I'm the guy that can eat the same thing for breakfast and lunch and dinner every day. I'm a salmon guy and a fish guy. I go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Like, I'm a routine guy. I've also been married 26 years, and my wife is not a routine person, which means that I get broken out of my routine. And one of those is about moving. So I bought my first house in 2002, Stu. I bought my 9th house this past August. And I just finished my 4th kitchen remodel in 8 years. And what's interesting about this is it helped me visualize transformation. Again, shout out to my wife, Frances Allen, in 26 years, because these painful transformations helped me realize some things that gave me empathy for my customers. So here are a couple lessons from my remodel. So the first remodel, Stu, we're trying to scrape together money to do just the kitchen remodel. Even doing what we could afford, Stu, it still had a cost and a timeline longer than we thought, right? It was supposed to take 6 weeks. It took more like 4 months. And I remember there was this pivotal moment in the process, Stu, and I hope your listeners can relate to this. We tore everything down in the kitchen, down to the subfloor. And I remember there was a point where the contractor was putting the cabinets on the wall. And he said, "Bobby, do you want it to be straight or do you want it to look straight?" Because sometimes when you take all the stuff down, you realize that the floor wasn't level and the wall wasn't plumb. And you're confronted with the question of, what do you do when the change you want to achieve hits a ceiling of which you're not willing or able to change? And you've got to wrestle with, is this worth me digging into? Like, how deep does a transformation have to go? So that's the lesson from kitchen remodel number 1. Kitchen remodel number 2, Stu, was crazy because we did a bigger project that time. We were kind of gun shy from the first remodel. Should have taken 6 weeks, took like 3-4 months. This next guy comes in, we go with a different contractor that time. He says, "I can have your whole kitchen done in 2 weeks." I'm like, there's no way. This guy was willing to bet me money, Stu, that he could finish an entire kitchen in 2 weeks. He was done in 3 weeks. And he was done in 3 weeks because the counters held him up. What's the lesson there? 1, sometimes you're still constrained, despite the skill of the contractor, by the availability of materials. How many of us can relate to that today? But the other thing, more importantly, that I want people to take away from this, I knew this was my guy. I asked him, Stu, how I was going to pay him. And he said, "Give me $10,000 up front, and then you don't pay me till I finish a room." We did a kitchen, we did a basement, we did a remodel. One of the biggest things about transformation, Stu, that's really powerful is when you are aligned with the incentives of the partners that you have. And so if he only gets paid when he finishes a room, then he's aligned to be done so that he's not in my house all the time and we get him out of the way. Probably the third remodel, Stu, was the one that was the toughest because we knocked down a load-bearing wall. We actually moved out for that one for about 6 weeks. And what was interesting about that was we were doing one room, but that was probably the most disruptive. And here's my question for the audience, is when you're making a change, is this decorative, dusty, or dangerous? Because sometimes you're changing stuff that's on the wall that's cosmetic, like paint or wallpaper or whatever. Sometimes you're knocking down walls, but sometimes you're knocking down what the wall hangs on. And so you can literally have things that can cause your entire house or organization to fall down if you're not careful. And so we had to make up plans. We had to bring people in. It looked like a war zone. So we had to move out. I didn't want to spend the money to move out, but my wife was like, it'll be better for our sanity if we do. And she was right. So yeah, so many lessons too that come out of this. Transformation is very disruptive. And I think we have to realize your appetite for change is kind of limited by a budget for disruption. Do you want to live in the middle of construction dust for 2 months? Because sometimes we've got to think about, like, can you be in the midst of all this change and really handle it correctly? Or is that going to make you frazzled and feel like you really don't have a clear mindset to understand what you want to do? I can continue, Stu, but what I'll say is real estate has been a powerful, powerful visual for me to understand. You know, I've got a budget, I've got a timeline. Obviously, none of those things hold up in the end when you're dealing with all these sorts of changes. But it gave me empathy, Stu, for the customers who are trying to innovate and operate in environments at the same time. You probably live in a house where you're knocking down walls, maybe load-bearing walls, adding in kitchens, different things like that. And you have these trade-offs. Last one I'll make from the last one, Stu, is sometimes you can save money because you can meet the spirit of what you want, even if it's not new and shiny. My wife has become the queen of eBay appliances, Stu. So things that are not brand new, that were like showroom floor models, or maybe it's got a little bit of a cosmetic scratch, like literally half the cost. And so think about, you know, how do you get the spirit of what you want and maximize the dollars? Maybe you don't need hardwood floors. Maybe you can do LVP instead of that. It's got the look, it's got the functionality. My son has allergies. It doesn't matter the cost of the wood, but we can't have carpet. And I think people have to come back, Stu, to what are your requirements? And then within that, you've got some flexibility in how you meet that.
Yeah. No, Bobby, Jensen says you always need the latest generation of NVIDIA card, no matter the cost. So I hear
you can't argue with Jensen, so he's right.
Bobby, the only thing I'd say, I've only done one kitchen remodel. If you can, avoid doing it when a global pandemic strikes and everything grinds to a halt, because 6 months without a kitchen really sucked.
Terrible. Terrible.
But yeah, my wife, I think, will definitely be gun shy on any of that stuff. Bobby, when you talk about change, got a lot of empathy for the next generation coming up. When you think about, like, you know, when I went to university, I was like, oh, I'm going to study engineering. What type? Oh, I'm not sure. But in my 4 years, I learned a few things and I didn't have to change a lot. I've got I've got a daughter in college. So do you. When I think about her classmates, and I know some people studying computer science, and I'm trying to, like, oh my gosh, what advice do we give them? What skills should you be learning? I know you've got a lot of connection on that, and you've been doing some great things. So show us your shirt and tell us what you've been working on, Bobby.
Yeah, so this is like my favorite shirt now. This is from the AI lab at University of Michigan, where my wife and I went for grad school, and my daughter's now a freshman. And so many things, Stu. One, I feel like in this next phase of my career, I just care so much, Stu, about investing in the next generation. Being with students on campus and seeing how they really are the future, and they're living in an environment that has so much change. I mean, Stu, even with all the things you and I have been through, this is still the most disruptive time in technology by far that I've ever lived in, even from the crazy days of multi-cloud. And things are so much faster. So I feel like listening to students, empowering faculty and staff, which is another thing. The faculty, Stu, so many faculty members have pulled me aside and said, Bobby, I'm blowing up my syllabus every 2 weeks. I want to make sure that I can stay relevant. I want to make sure that the degree is worth the paper is printed on, and we're giving students the practical things that they need to live. And so this is a big deal for me. So a couple of things that I've shared with students and with faculty, some of the Bobbyisms that I try to leave with them when I go there. One, everything new isn't good and everything old isn't bad. Success now is about mastering the remix, about the new things to embrace and the old things to retain. So quick story. My daughter was taking Python in her first semester at Michigan, Stu. And she was having some challenges in the class, and she calls me up. She says, hey, Dad, can you help me with this Python class? We're doing it in this Google Code Labs thing. And I'm like, are you kidding? I've been waiting for this my whole life. Of course I can help you, right? Now, what's interesting is she said, so we get on the phone, Stu, and she's like, so you know Python? I said, no, I don't know Python. She's like, well, how are you going to help me? Because when I was a student at Michigan as a graduate student instructor, I helped teach programming in C++. And I said, a lot of those concepts are very relevant. It was, and her questions are on flow control, right? For loops, while loops, if statements, a little bit of data structures. And she said, Dad, you taught me something, that those skills from 20 plus years ago, even in a different language, are relevant today. That's one thing I hope students understand, is that there are some foundational principles like understanding programming, understanding problem solving, understanding why you're doing something, not just what you're doing, that will always age well. Things like asking good questions. Number two, learn all you can, but don't forget all you know. That's somewhat for the students too, but also for people like us that are middle-aged. A lot of the things that we're doing now, Kelsey would say, rhyme with something we've heard before. There's a connection with a lot of the things we're doing now, service-oriented architecture, things like cloud and AI, like they're all related in a lot of ways that build on each other. But the last thing I'll share about this, Stu, is the executive summary I give to students and executives when I get to do keynotes is this: AI is not the thing. AI is the thing that makes the thing better. So AI is not the dish, it's the sauce or the spice to make the dish better. Now, we would not put whatever the latest stuff is, sriracha sauce or hot honey sauce, on the plate. It's got a good taste, but it's no substance. If you give someone that, they're going to be left wanting, because that's not a meal. So my message to students is the people that are going to be successful are the ones that can operate at the intersection of AI and something else. There may be AI in medicine, or AI in law, or AI in critical thinking, AI in ethics, because it's applying AI to different problem sets like finance or investment banking or medical records that are really going to move the world forward. So think about the thing and think about how AI is the sauce of the dish to make that better, but don't put AI on a plate and think that we're done.
All right, Bobby, awesome stuff. No, great to see what you're doing in that space and everything, and definitely lots of lessons to learn. I think we're going to go to some rapid fire questions from a red hat now.
Okay.
All right, Bobby. First question. I know you go to the gym. I know you got your hobbies. I know you got your things. But if I'm going to gift you a free hour, what are you going to do to stimulate your mind? You're going to read a book? You're going to watch a podcast? You're going to go do some AI project on the side, or something else?
If I've got an hour, Stu, I'm probably going to take a lot of the articles and podcasts that are on my to-do list and throw them in a notebook and LM and do a video overview or audio overview. That's my condensed learning tool of choice right now. That's probably what I'm going to do. And then from there, if I've got a little bit more time, I'd probably go to reading a book after.
Right.
But notebook and LM for the executive summary.
Do you find the cliff notes of the podcasts or the articles, is that being useful for you?
Absolutely. And the ability to ask questions, like the chat interface. I'm a huge fan of the video overview. It's like watching a little movie of the information condensed. So I think that's my new favorite way.
I gotta try that. I like Notebook LM. I haven't had it do audio or video back for me. So really cool to see. All right. Question number 2, Bobby. You said you've been 4.5 years at Google. Tell us, what does Googliness mean to you?
Googliness to me, Stu, means that we are trying to deal with folks according to empathy, not arrogance. A lot of people feel like smart people work at Google. That's true. But are you giving benefit of the doubt? Are you assuming best intent? Are you listening for what the person is asking, not just what they're saying? Because they may have a need that they can't articulate the words for. To me, Googliness is about trying to help people and being patient enough to do that and to listen well. That's what it means to me.
Awesome. All right, Bobby, last one. You're a workout enthusiast. What tips do you have for the tech community, whether they're sitting at home or whether they happen to be a road warrior?
Yeah, great question, Stu. So if you get on the road, now you may get flagged in security. This has happened to me before. I pack push-up bars and a jump rope. I think they think I'm a Ninja Turtle. They think those are nunchucks half the time. But pack stuff in your bag and plan in your schedule that you're going to do something to work out. Even when you go on the road, pack the workout clothes. I'm follically challenged, so I've got to have my headband. I'm not ready to work out if I don't have a headband, so I pack my headband, my workout gear. But just do what's sustainable. So for me, Stu, I do 3 days a week. What I feel like what's sustainable for me, I'm 48 now, is every other day roughly. I can do Monday or Tuesday, I can do Wednesday or Thursday, and I can do a day on the weekend. 3 days a week for 20 plus years. I think I was just putting up about 325 on the bench this weekend, not to brag, but just to show that consistency beats intensity over time. Even 2 or 3 days a week is good enough. Start with what you can, sprinkle consistency on it, and watch it actually start to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely, Bobby. The habits are going to meet whatever motivation you have there.
Yes.
I do cycling indoor and outdoors.
Yes.
Don't wear the headband. I do some when I ride outside, but have to have the towel a bit for that. But absolutely, it's good. All right, Bobby, you've made it through the question from Red Hat. Thank you so much. Nice job.
Thank you.
Lots more we could cover, but really, I think we've had a great conversation, Bobby. I'll give you the final word. You're going to be in Vegas for Google Next in a bit. Do you need the jump rope if you're getting in, 15, 20,000 steps a day, walking around Las Vegas? What do you want? Where should people be looking for? Where should they learn more if they want to follow you?
So I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I've also got a personal website at bobbyjallen.me, but I'm pretty easy to find. I'm out there. So I love connecting with new people. If we're at an event, please grab me. Please say hello. I love connecting with the community at places like KubeCon and Cloud Next, like Stu talked about in Vegas. I guess the thing that I would want to leave with the audience, Stu, is this is my personal philosophy, which is that tech is the easy part of tech. The longer version is tech is the easy part. People are the best part. Behavior is the hard part. Humility is the worst part. Tech is like the part of the iceberg that's above the water. All the other things are below the waterline. Technology is what I do, but it's not who I am. My identity is not based in the tooling and the stuff that I learned. I wanted to be about people and about making life better for someone. And I love connecting with folks who are like-minded.
Awesome. Well, Bobby Allen, great to talk with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Always good to catch up with you, and definitely hope we can cross paths coming again soon.
Thanks for having me, Stu. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So thank you. We've got 2 episodes in already this year. Next episode's actually going to be exactly 4 weeks from today. We're going to be having another guest who is at KubeCon Atlanta, actually one of our keynote speakers, Anjali Talang, who's part of our security team. As I said, gave a keynote at the Atlanta conference and some of the updates that we've got for OpenShift. So make sure to tune into that. And as I said at the top also, if you haven't already made your plans for KubeCon Europe and you're going, you'll want to do that. A lot going on. And registration is open for Red Hat Summit. So hope to be seeing you at Atlanta for that. So thank you for watching episode 50. It's been a blast, as always, connecting with the community. If you've got topics or guests that you'd like me to look at, get in touch real easy. stu@redhat.com is my email, or I'm easy to find through the interwebs otherwise. And thank you, as always, for joining us on your journey in the clouds.